Before diving into this incredible story, remember to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. Here, every story has something to say, and you won't want to miss a single one. The sun was setting over Washington, D.C., bathing the red brick facades and fluttering flags in a golden light. In an affluent residential neighborhood, the home of General Marcus Whitaker, a respected U.S. Army veteran, exuded serenity and discipline. Yet, that very evening, an unexpected storm was brewing behind its walls. Captain Derek Harlow of the local police walked with heavy steps, his face contorted with anger and contempt. He had received an anonymous call accusing the general's son of suspicious behavior. But Harlow had only one thought in mind: Marcus Whitaker wasn't like the other officers he knew. He was black. And for Harlow, that single skin color was enough to arouse suspicion. Without waiting for an official warrant, the captain forced his way into the estate. The guard dogs barked furiously, but he drove them back brutally. Inside, the Whitaker family was dining peacefully, unaware of the approaching danger. The general, a tall man of military discipline, immediately rose, surprised and furious. "Captain Harlow, what are you doing in my house?" asked Marcus, his voice firm but controlled. "I'm upholding the law," Harlow retorted, his eyes flashing with hatred. "You and your family are suspects." Marcus Whitaker felt indignation surge through him. How could a police officer invade his home simply because of the color of his skin? But what Harlow didn't know was that Marcus was no ordinary citizen. His career, his influence, and his military connections would transform this violation into an affront that would not go unpunished. That night, a conflict between justice and racism was born. And no one, not even Derek Harlow, was prepared for the explosive outcome that would follow. The sound of Derek Harlow's heels echoed in the luxurious entrance hall of the Whitaker house. Each step seemed to amplify the hostility that hung in the air. The family portraits on the walls, depicting generations of Whitaker military men, seemed to silently judge the captain. General Marcus Whitaker stood tall, his immaculate uniform a reminder to Harlow of the discipline and respect he embodied. But Harlow hadn't come for the sake of politeness. His gaze was a mixture of arrogance and suspicion. "Captain, you have no warrant. You can't just walk in here like that," exclaimed Marcus, his voice echoing through the vast hall. "I don't need a warrant when I know a criminal is hiding under this roof," Harlow retorted contemptuously, completely ignoring Marcus's icy tone. "I'm going to search this house, and you can thank me for keeping the law intact." Derek Harlow began inspecting the house, opening doors and searching drawers. The Whitakers remained motionless, shocked by the officer's audacity. The general's 25-year-old daughter, Alicia Whitaker, tried to intervene. "Stop. You have no rights here." But Harlow burst into a sarcastic laugh. "You don't understand, miss. Your father is different. And to me, different means suspicious." At that moment, Marcus felt a simmering anger rising within him. He knew that any physical reaction could be used against him by a racist police officer. But he wasn't going to stand idly by. Calmly, but with undeniable authority, he declared, "Captain, I order you to leave this house immediately. You are putting yourself in danger, and you don't know the people you're playing with." Harlow shrugged and continued his search, ignoring the warnings. But just as he was about to open a safe in Marcus's office, a loud thud rang out behind him. The house phone had been triggered, calling Marcus's office at the Army. Within seconds, a deep voice answered from the other end, calmly asking, "General Whitaker? What's going on?" Harlow, realizing too late the gravity of the situation, froze. He had just entered the territory of a man who was not just a soldier, he was a respected general, with contacts capable of changing the game in an instant. The first stage of the confrontation had just begun. And for Harlow, the price of his arrogance and racism would soon become terribly clear. Derek Harlow's face paled slightly when he realized the general's phone had just triggered a direct alert to headquarters. He understood that his intrusion wasn't a simple, ordinary abuse of power. He had just attacked a man capable of mobilizing resources far beyond his comprehension. Marcus Whitaker, unperturbed, advanced slowly towards the captain, each step measured and imbued with authority. "Captain Harlow, I advise you to stop now," he said, his voice calm but icy. "Every move you make from this moment on will be recorded and tracked. The law is not an excuse for your personal hatred." Harlow stiffened, but his pride and racism compelled him to continue. "You think your uniform and titles are going to impress me? You're just different. And different breeds doubt." At these words, Marcus felt anger simmering within him. He knew that responding with physical force immediately could be interpreted as aggression. But he had another weapon, his intelligence and his network. He picked up his phone and made a silent call to his trusted military deputy, Colonel James "Jim" Foster. A few minutes later, Foster and 2 private security agents, all former military officers, were already on their way to the house. Harlow, unaware of the ongoing mobilization, continued searching the library, thinking he could still enforce the law on his own. But the silence of the house, previously filled with tension, transformed into an electric atmosphere. Every noise seemed to herald an imminent catastrophe. Alicia Whitaker, the general's daughter, then made a bold decision. She approached the captain and firmly declared, "You leave this house immediately. Otherwise, I swear you'll regret it. My father won't let this go." Harlow turned around abruptly. "You, young lady, don't know what you're talking about. I'm doing what's necessary to maintain order." Marcus, seeing that the situation could become uncontrollable, calmly raised his hand and said, "Captain, you chose this moment to test the limits. Now you will learn that your prejudices have consequences." At that moment, the back door opened and Colonel Foster entered with his men. In less than a minute, Harlow found himself surrounded, unable to escape, his options reduced by the strategic presence of the former soldiers. Derek's racism and arrogance had just trapped him. And Marcus knew this situation was only the beginning. A lesson was about to be taught, not with threats, but with a power Harlow had never considered. Captain Derek Harlow stood in the center of the lounge, surrounded by Marcus Whitaker and Colonel James Foster, along with their former officers. Every breath Harlow breathed betrayed his nervousness, but his pride still compelled him to try to maintain a facade of authority. "Captain Harlow," Marcus began, his voice cold as steel, "you have just crossed a line you should never have crossed. You invaded my home, threatened my family, and acted on absurd prejudices. Now you will learn what it truly means to respect the law and those who serve it honestly." Harlow opened his mouth to reply, but Foster placed a firm hand on his shoulder. "Not a word, Harlow. We'll settle this in a way you'll never forget." Alicia Whitaker, her eyes sparkling with anger and defiance, added, "You think you're powerful because you wear a badge? That badge is nothing compared to the integrity and honor my father represents." Harlow felt his face flush. For the first time, he wasn't in control. His entire world, built on his prejudices and arrogance, was beginning to crumble. Marcus, without raising his voice, produced an official document from his desk. "Captain, this is a recording of your intrusion, with evidence of every illegal action you committed. I have already sent a copy to your superior and the prosecutor. Justice does not depend on your personal preferences." The silence that followed was deafening. Harlow realized that his career, his honor, and his reputation were now at stake. And worse still, he knew that every move he made from now on would be scrutinized. "You will learn, Derek," Marcus continued, "that the law does not protect those who abuse their power. It protects those who serve it justly." At that precise moment, Harlow felt anger and fear mingle. He had never been faced with a situation where his racism and violence had been completely neutralized by the mere presence and calm of a black man he had underestimated. Marcus gestured towards Alicia. "Call the relevant authorities so they can take over. Harlow must be held accountable for his actions." As police sirens wailed in the distance, Harlow knew his illusory day of glory was over. For the first time in his life, he was powerless, humiliated, and confronted with reality. His prejudices and arrogance had led to his downfall. And Marcus Whitaker knew that this was only the beginning of the lesson Derek Harlow would never forget. Police sirens now wailed through the upscale neighborhood, signaling the imminent end of Derek Harlow's audacity. Agents dispatched by the district attorney's office and the army arrived swiftly, escorting Harlow from the Whitaker home. Every step he took was heavy, his pride crushed by shame and fear. Marcus Whitaker watched the scene from the lobby, calm but with undeniable authority. Alicia stood beside him, her face radiant with pride and relief. Marcus knew that justice wasn't just found in the courts, it began with moral fortitude and setting a good example. "Captain Harlow," Marcus said, his voice ringing with gravity, "you were warned, and you did not listen. The law exists to protect the innocent, not to satisfy prejudice and hatred." Harlow, humiliated before the assembled officers and neighbors, bowed his head. He knew his career was over, his reputation ruined, and his conscience would never let him forget this lesson. He had underestimated Marcus Whitaker, and now he had to pay the price. The general, turning his gaze towards his family, said with a slight smile, "We are not seeking revenge. We are simply seeking justice. And tonight, it has been served." Alicia placed a hand on her father's shoulder. "Dad, you have shown what it means to be a true leader, even in the face of someone who believes that skin color can dictate what is right." Marcus Whitaker simply replied, "True power lies not in intimidation or fear. It lies in discipline, justice, and resilience." Harlow was taken away, leaving behind an undamaged house, but also a clear message: hatred and racism never triumph when justice and courage are firmly rooted. The Whitaker family gathered in the living room, silent, but with a newfound strength. That night, they knew they had not only protected their home, but also affirmed that honor and dignity always triumph over fear and hatred. And somewhere in the shadows, Derek Harlow realized that the humiliation he was enduring was only the beginning of his own forced introspection. A lesson he would never forget.